Welcome to the Filmmaker and Screenwriting Podcast with Adé Titan. Hey everybody, welcome to the Filmmaker and Screenwriting Podcast with Adé Titan, and today's guest is none other than Adé Akisanya, and I want to thank him for coming through today and blessing us with his magnificence. I do not and I will not take up too much time trying to explain who this brother is and what he do, because I will say this: he made a movie some years ago, and I have been a fan of his work since then. It is man, it's one of those kind of movies that you sit in the theater, you eating popcorn, and you like, damn, this is exhilarating on the highest level. And I didn't even know who he was at that time, but all my days that I probably have seen that film probably about 6 times. And all my days, every time they played it somewhere, I was watching it. And all my days that I wanted to, I watched that film. I always wanted to meet Adé. And I had the opportunity to actually walk up to him and introduce myself and really get to know him, because I really wanted to know who made this film. Now, I'm not going to, look, let's just do it like this. Y'all know me. I spend a lot of time and all that talking, but I let my guests tell you who they are. Adé, tell us about you, man. Tell us who you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. So my name is Adé Akisanya. Been writing stories and screenplays for over 30 years. Shot out to shoot my own film back in 2006. Was it 2005, around 6? I shot ESP, a comedy that did very well. Shot a number of shorts that won awards. But writing is my true passion. Telling stories is really my heart. I actually pushed into directing because when I first got into the industry, it was really hard trying to get someone to buy a script. So sometimes you got to get out there and tell your own stories. Again, like I said, I've been doing this for a while. So there was a time before digital video, before we started shooting on Canon XL1s and 2s, where, if it wasn't Hollywood or network TV, you didn't really have exposure. And so with the advent of those type of digital cameras, I took to directing and shooting my own stuff. So that's it. That's it pretty much about me. I shot a film in 2015 called 93 Days. We shot that in Nigeria. It's on Netflix. You can catch it there. And we're working on a project right now. Derry was kind enough to really give it a really strong critique, and he tore it apart, and I thank him for it. It really got the story where it needed to be. You can never overlook good feedback. And so I'm really grateful for that. So appreciate you, bro.
Oh man, no problem. So you're a writer, right, Adé?
I've always called myself a storyteller. I think writers copy, storytellers create. And so I've always considered myself a person who just creates and tells stories. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your writing process real quick.
So for me, I write fast. When I was in grad school, kind of like you, we both went to grad school for film. When I was in grad school, I learned a really cool trick that I've been using ever since, and that is to never overthink the process in the first draft. Get it out. Just get the first draft out of you. So I learned to just write fast, never second guess, never try to edit too quick. Prior to that, I used to write maybe the first act, and then I'll stick on the first act for 2-3 weeks, just trying to get it perfect. I moved away from that. I learned that you lose a lot when you edit in your head. So I tend to just pour it out on the paper and just let the first draft go. It's really not for anyone but me. And then I start the rewrite process.
Then you start to rewrite. So in writing, right? So a lot of times, in this season, everyone that I talked to, I wanted to address structure, writing and structure. And so, and the reason why I wanted to address structure was because I work with a lot of writers who don't understand structure, are having a hard time with structure, feel like structure is too contrite. It feels like they're stuck. It feels like it offers no space for creativity. So in your writing, do you write according to a structure?
So yeah, absolutely. So structure is the meat and potatoes of screenwriting. Without structure, you can really get lost in this work because it seems like it's easy until you start writing. Anyone can pitch a 2-minute story, but it's hard to write a 120-page screenplay. You start to lose steam by the time you hit page 20. And so you still want it to be just as tight, just as cohesive, just as interesting as that 2-minute pitch over the course of 90 pages, right? And so what helps you with that is structure. It's really developing a strong structure that works for the story. I've learned through experience that there's no one structure that works overall for each story. Some stories might require you use a 3-act structure. Okay, some stories, depending on how you want to tell it, may require you use the 8-sequence structure. Some may say, hey, use the hero's journey. If it's a story like Spider-Man or a story that has a hero that goes through this transition or this transformational arc. So there's so many different structures out there, but you have to know your story and you have to know your craft well enough to know what story is best for what structure. I don't lean in on a specific structure. I don't say, oh, 3-act structure for everything. No. With the stories that we tell, African-American stories, Black stories, sometimes it doesn't fit in that Western structure style. Sometimes you might have to really look outside the 3-act structure, or Aristotle's, who coined the 3-act structure, look outside that structure style and start to look at what helps your story, because the wrong structure can hurt a story, right? Without a structure, it can hurt a story also. So you have to really think about what skill sets you bring to the table before you go into this work. Like, you can't come in with just one bullet. Like, I just use 3-act structure. That wouldn't serve you well through your course as a writer. There's so many. I think one of the best structure styles that I like to use, or I lean into, is Crick Hulk. I think his name is Crick Hulk, Screenwriting 101. He talks about the multi-act flow, where once you understand what an act is and how to develop an act, you don't need just one act. You don't need just 3 acts. When you can develop acts, you can have 4 acts in your story. It could be a Shakespearean 5-act story, right? You can possibly even have 6 acts with a prologue in the beginning as an act, right? When you understand the structures and how to build an act, then you don't have to constrain yourself to the 3-act structure. You don't have to fit your story into these preconceived templates. You can actually just organically build your story out. And so for me, I don't focus in on just one story, on one particular style of structure. Again, I did a story called Beneath the Rock, which is an African story about things that happen. It's a period piece. 3-act structure just wasn't working for me. I won't say it wasn't working for me, but it didn't give me the type of, I had so many different moving parts that it didn't feel right for me. And so once I used the multi-act flow, it fit neatly. And those who read it said, oh, this is the 3-act structure. They can see it in there. And I'm smiling like, yeah, I'm sure you can cut the 3-act into it, but I know what I use in order for it to be tight, for it to be succinct, for it to still have the tempo and the pacing necessary to be an intriguing story.
Let's dive into that. Black storytelling. What's a way that Black people tell stories that you think is different than everybody else?
Well, first of all, what is the Black experience? That's different. When we tell stories, we're coming from an organic place. At least when I'm telling a story, there's an authenticity to it. It's about my experience. It's about my journey. It's about my environment, right? And when you think about our experience as African Americans, as Black people, and when you think about our journey, our environments, it's unique to us, right? So losing your job, losing your car, and losing your girlfriend all on the same day is typical. That can happen in the Black community. Things can go wrong quick. In a white community, that'd be too many plot points to happen, and they'll think that story is just not, it's not working, right? It's like you got too much going on. But in our community, a lot can happen in a person's life where you can feel like this just is not happening, right?
Mm.
So how do you tell that story when someone would read it and say, man, you got 3 plot points or you have 3 inciting incidents? Like, no. And they might not want to agree with it. I'm like, no, this is what happens in our community. In our experience, things can go wrong and can go awry quickly. And it may be more than 1 or 2 things that can happen. There could be a passing of a family member, and that can trigger a shift in our lives. And in the story world, that could be a shift, a pivot in the story. So sticking to the 3-act structure, for example, when you have a story like that, can be hard for writers, for new writers, to really start to identify, so which one is my plot point? Which one is moving me into act 2? Which one is, the midpoint? Which one is the lost point in the story? What's driving me into act 3? I have so many other big points that's happening in this story. And if they're just hanging out there, then it can be detrimental to the story if you're not writing it correctly. But if you know how to develop an act, then it can really serve the story well, because people can now see the momentum of what's happening in this world, what's happening with these people, what's happening in this culture, what's vibrant about this culture, how we think, how we feel, how things move, how we tell stories. Yeah, I think our culture, whether it be in Africa or here, across the diaspora, we have a unique way of telling stories, and we can't get lost in the Western way of structures that we lose sight of being able to give our best story. In Nigeria, just by the way, when they make films, their films can be 3-4 hours long. They're not behold to the 2-hour 120-page script. Like, no, you'll see a 3-hour film. But I promise you, every last bit of that 3 hours will be on point.
Mm.
You will enjoy it. Sometimes it's even 4 hours and they break it into series, but it's just a film. That's Nollywood for you, right? That's not. So I think that we need to expand our knowledge and our way of telling stories, so that we're not limited to just one way or one style of structure.
But what's your favorite genre to write, Ade?
Drama. I love drama. It's between drama and comedy, but I don't know jack about comedy. I'm not even a funny person, but I enjoy watching it. I wish I could write it. I've written a few scripts on comedy. I enjoy the process of writing it out, but it just always is awful, like awful work. But my go-to, my strength, what I believe is in my wheelhouse to write and be professional, is dramas. I really understand my way around telling and writing a drama.
So what's your career wise, how do you see your career going? What is your career? Like, what is the thing that you want to see you doing for the next 50 years? If you could say, well, where do you see yourself going? Yeah, let's get this out in the universe. Let's put this in the universe.
Yes. So I want to see myself writing and directing. I want to see myself writing and directing I got a great number of pieces I know that once they get out would really, I hope would really land well in the market. And they're all dramas, actually, now that you mention that. So I think when I look back at my body of work, I think that I have a lot to say and talk about. I'm very, and you know this anyway, but for your audience, I'm very, I don't want to use the word militant, because I think that has a negative connotation, but I am a social activist, and I use my tool, my instrument, my writing to communicate that, right? And so a lot of my work will always have some part of our community, our social fabric, who we are, what our society looks like. Very similar to Spike Lee, in that if we were to disappear and 1,000 years later or 5,000 years later, they were able to unearth Earth and see Spike Lee films, it would tell you about what society looked like in that era, because Spike Lee spoke of the time.
Young writers, they always want to know, what can they do to make it in this industry? What do you tell a writer? A writer walks up, a young writer walks up to you and say, hey, you know, Ade, I heard the podcast. Can you read my work? And what do I need to do to make it in this industry? What you say to that?
Writing, if your journey is to be a writer, it is not a sprint. This is a marathon. You got to be thick-skinned, and you got to be prepared to go the distance. Don't quit. Take breaks if you have to, but never quit. And stop trying to be interesting. Stop trying to tell interesting stories. Interesting is an insult to the imagination. You know, just let it go. Just tell what's in your mind. Let it pour out. Stop trying to ask if it's interesting or if it works. Just let the story go. Like, you'll be surprised what hits the page when you're not encumbering the work with all this mental decisions that you're making. So I would say just let it flow. I think for most aspiring writers, it's important to know that the process of writing doesn't begin and end with getting a script sold. The process of writing is about personal development and personal growth. So you have to be able to acknowledge and know when you're growing, when you have to keep writing and keep writing. Every script you write, you get a little stronger. Every story you tell, another story surfaces up that might be that winning story. You can't hope that it's just this one story. I'm going to make it with this one script. I know I did that when I first came out. I was like, I got this wonderful story and this one's taking me to the top. You know, you can't do that. You got to just you got to be patient with the process. You got to trust your writing. And lastly, master your craft. Do not, let me say this. If you read a book that says, here's how you write a script in 21 days, if you get a article that says, do this, that, and you'll be writing, this all, and I hate to say this, I'm not trying to knock anyone's hustle, it's trash. Writing is longer than 21 days reading a book. You got to educate yourself. You got to put in the work. You got to go to seminars. You got to go to classes. You got to get taught. You got to understand all the subtle nuances. You would have never walked into a doctor's office that only knew one thing about medicine, you know, and so you want to make sure that that person is well taught and well trained. You know, you wouldn't go to a car mechanic that says, all I got is a screwdriver. I can fix anything. You drag your car and you pull out. Right. So you don't want to go to a screenwriter. The only thing they got is just one trick pony, you know, and that's not cool. You want to really master your craft and stay working on it. If you got to go to college to put yourself in an incubator where there are other screenwriters and networking, then do that. Don't be scared of that. If you have to get out into the streets and work and join a writer's group, do that. But stay working and studying and mastering that craft, because that's the only way your stories will be at the benefit of being told, is with great mastery.
I like that you came to that point, because that leads me into the next question, which is, what's your goal? Your GOLD. What's the goal? At the nuggets of wisdom, after all of the time that you've been writing, directing, what are some things that you've learned that you carry with you, like on this journey?
So what I've learned in studying, so I did a lot of studying of great films and films that work and films that are very successful. And what I drew from those films is an acronym I call the MEAT, M-E-A-T. And I use that acronym, I use that model, so to speak, to write my stories. And it's been I think once I learned that, my stories really start to have substance and some good feel to it. The M stands for message, the E stands for entertainment, the A stands for art, and the T stands for truth. And so when I'm writing a story, my question is, before I get into what's the message, what am I trying to tell? What are people walking away with? I tell this story. And then I always ask, because of course we know this business is about entertainment. How is that entertaining? How is this story entertaining? What is unique about my characters and how they interact that's entertaining, that people would want to watch this experience? So I'm really keying in on the entertainment from that perspective, from how my characters interact with one another. Not just by default because I'm making a film, therefore it's entertainment. No, but what is entertaining about how they interact? What is entertaining about how they make decisions that you would normally make if you were in that same predicament? So I'm looking at what the entertainment value is of the story and how I tell it. Then I'm looking at how I'm contributing to the art of film, because it is an art. And so what artistic approach am I taking to tell this story? When you look at films like The Notebook, a wonderful story about dementia, right? But they were very artistic way they approached that they took to telling that story, right? They start the story talking about a guy in a home with a woman, and he's just telling her stories about his life. That's his wife. We don't get to know that. That's an artistic approach, right? That approach, that unique artistic approach, helps tell that story. And so I always ask myself, what is the approach? How am I telling this story? Am I just taking a linear approach, A to Z, or am I introducing something into the story that makes it artistic, that really brings a sense of artistic flair to the story? Then lastly, what's the truth? What's the authenticity? Are these characters real? Is this story something that people can believe? And so once you have those and they're all in balance, not one overbearing the other, where it's just too much message but not enough entertainment, or too much entertainment but not enough art, or too much art and there's just, all it is truth, right? Like once those are all in balance, you have a great solid script, because there's a message that you have to tell. It's very entertaining where the message is not overbearing, and it's artistic where the art that you're sharing isn't encumbering on everything else, and there's some authenticity to the characters and to the story. That's my nugget. That's what I think, that when I'm done with my final rewrite, where I've passed on action, where I've passed on dialogue, where I've taken my pass on the structure, where I've taken a pass on everything, my last pass is the model. What's the message? What's entertaining? Let's relook at this scene. Why is it entertaining? What's artistic about the story and my approach to telling it? How did I execute my concepts? Is it strong? Is the style strong? It's something that someone can see. Once I've done that, then I think that I'm in a good space. And that's really helped my growth and my development as a writer. Another nugget that I have is, I believe great ideas do not make great movies. Great scripts do. And it's in the writing. So execution is the key. I think Hemingway once said, it's not the size of the idea, it's the temperature of it. And I think that really worked for me. Stop trying to think about these great big ideas and that's what's going to sell. No, your execution is the most important part. If you can't sit down and execute, then the story gets lost in poor execution. And so mastering your craft, learning how to build strong skill sets, and developing dialogue, developing characters, really understanding structure, to your point at the top of this conversation. These become very critical because they are at the benefit, your artistry is at the benefit of good craftsmanship.
If you get cut off, that's because you just took over my podcast and they no longer listen to me anymore. Okay, I'm cutting you off right now because you just stole everybody from me to go listen to you forever. You just, man, you
the man, bro. You the man.
Killed it out there. You just smashed it right there, man. You smashed it. I am so pleased to have you on the podcast, man. I am so thankful that you were able to make time to join us, today. For everyone that is listening right now, I guarantee you, this is one you want to go back and listen to. And if you get an opportunity to listen to the first 9 as well, like you get a chance to hear a mixed tape of individuals who have had some success in this industry, who continues to thrive in this industry, who continues to drive this industry forward. And you are a part of that process. And we want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. And Adé, again, thank you so much, brother.
Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
No, man.
Harry, you know you're the man. Great work. Love your book. I think I got your book here. Where's your book? I got it here. Yep, it's back here. Let me tell people about this book before we go. Because it's an excellent book. It's this book here. Listen, this is what you need as a partner, companion as you write. You need this book as a companion. It's going to help you think through a lot of things. Writers, we write alone. We're solitary. There's no group with us. We by ourselves. You need a companion. You need someone to walk you through it, talk you through it, write some examples. Bam. Like, I'm not just saying that because that's my boy. I'm saying it because I used it. So it is a real film mechanic, right? So I appreciate you for all the work, for all the support, the writing, the podcast, supporting our people, getting our people out so that they can hear other Black writers, other filmmakers, other storytellers. We didn't have this. What Derry's doing, we didn't have this when we were coming up, right? So we didn't have these exposures and opportunities to learn from other people, but you're providing that. God bless you, bro.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate you. We're going to get out of here today. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Film Mechanic Screenwriting Podcast, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace. We appreciate your support. Be sure to leave a review and a comment and share it with your closest screenwriting friends. Stop by www.derrytitan.com for the Film Mechanic Screenwriting Workbook, and we'll see you next episode. Have an awesome, awesome, awesome day. Peace.